So in this world, cannibalism is legal. You must be wondering, what does this book and this book have in common? Absolutely nothing. But they are the shortest and longest books that I read in a 2-month period. Let me just say it in one quick sentence. Tender as the flesh is when a society, now because there's a virus that has contaminated animals, has to turn to consuming human meat. Um, yeah. Now, the book is very short. It is 211 pages. It is so short. And this is how I was reading it the whole time.
That's not. Oh. 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 No.
We are learning about this world through a meat process manager. So he's the guy who goes to the different places to get the meat. We know that he lives alone. We know that he and his wife tried for a baby, but the baby died. So the wife was like, just she kind of lost her mind and like went to go live with the grandma. We know that he's lonely. We know that he's moody. We know that he does not eat meat. And we know that he lived in this world pre animal virus, pre cannibalism. So he also remembers how things used to be. He kind of mourns that world. He mourns the world with his wife before his baby died. He mourns his baby. It's sad. It's sad. And what really interested me is how much information that we were getting about this character. Like I said, he missed this old world. He missed his wife. He mourned his child. He doesn't eat meat, so he doesn't participate in cannibalism, even though that's the only way to get meat, to consume meat, to get protein. Like the way that these heads are kept, that's basically what they call human cattle. They call them heads. They're branded, they're marked, they're naked, they don't have vocal cords because they're ripped out. They don't speak English. They aren't developed the same way as human beings are. So the way people speak about them is as if they're not human. They're products and stuff. So now the biggest trade in the world is the trade of human beings. This book's bigger topics is about sustainability. It's about climate change. It's about the irreversible effects that happen in this world and what human beings have done to attempt to survive through it. It's also about class, right? Because there are people who are rich and they can get really good meat, and they can get it marbled, and there's different flavors and stuff. But then there are poor people who have to sit outside of these plants and wait for the meat to be given to them, basically the discarded bits, whether they're diseased or not. Yeah, and there's also these like race elements, right? So there's the trade of skins for leather, and they talk about white skins and black skins and stuff like that. There are bounty hunters, so people who just enjoy the sport of killing. There's a lot about this book. While I was reading it, I felt really grossed out, not because it was nasty, but maybe thinking about the cruelty of what was happening to humans and how other humans were okay with it. But also, yes, it is also kind of gross, right? When we're thinking about eating eyeballs or livers of humans and things like that. But to be honest, the creepiest part of this book was actually our main character, Marcos. Like he works at this plant, right? And he's struggling with his consciousness. Marcos does not like the world that he's in, and that daily his job interferes with his consciousness. It rubs up against his consciousness. But he needs this job because guess what? His dad has some type of like Alzheimer's or dementia, and he lives in a home, and Marcos has to pay for him to be in that home, even though he knows his dad is going to die. Marcos is a really interesting guy because everything that he does suggests that he's doing it just to make ends meet. He's doing it because he has to have a living. He's doing it because this is the way the world is now. But there's something about him that I don't trust. I don't trust him. I never trusted him once in this book. I believe it's the second chapter where he is gifted a human. He's gifted a specimen, a head or whatever, and it's a female. And he doesn't want it. He doesn't want anything to do with it. He keeps it in his barn. And there are certain regulations that he has to do to prove that he owns one. If he chooses to start his own plant and impregnate it and make more, then he has to write a certain something for that. If he wants to kill it, he has to write a certain something for that. For a while, all we get is that he goes to his job, he interacts with these different people, he comes back home, he hates the fact that he owns this head now. There is a relationship that he has with a female butcher that, to me, hints at the violence that is to happen at the rest of the book. Very clinical, detached way that he interacts with this woman. And as far as we know, he's still married to his wife. And yet, when he meets with this female butcher, they have sex in a really, really awful way, in a really intense way that makes me think Marcos is not to be trusted. So then, as we proceed with this book, and trigger warning for rape and sexual assault. Marcos ends up having sex with this specimen, this head. Now, the second half of the book is the relationship that he has with this pregnant head that he is hiding, because if it was to be found out that he impregnated this head, they would both be sent to the slaughterhouse. There's a lot of scenes in between that I think are supposed to speak to Marco's humanity, which is like when he remembers going to the zoo with his dad, remembers how his dad used to look at his mom, how much love they have for each other, the dogs that he used to own that have died, the dogs that he finds in this abandoned zoo, that he like takes care of, but then the next time he comes, they're being killed by these little boys. He has a lot of grief. He has a really troubled relationship with his sister because his sister consumes meat. Her kids are terrible. She's terrible. Marcos, I think, sees himself above these people, sees himself as the person who has restraint. He has calm. He doesn't need meat. I think the book speaks to the fact that he's just as desperate and awful and wanting as everyone else, because he raped this woman, right? And impregnated her and kept her leashed in a house, right? She's still not her own person. She's owned by him, despite how well he treats her. So in the end, when Jasmine, who is the specimen that he owns, is giving birth, he calls his wife, who we find is a nurse. She gets there, she sees her husband and this pregnant head. She's disgusted, but of course, she helps this woman deliver birth to her baby. And the moment that I didn't want to happen happens. They take this baby from this nonverbal object or animal, in this case Jasmine, and she's making these like gestures like she wants to hold her baby. Marcos turns to Jasmine and hits her over the head, which is like the process to stunning animals before you kill them. And Cecilia doesn't scream. She doesn't say, "Oh my God, how could you do that?" Not worried about Jasmine at all. She says, "Why did you kill her? We could have used her to make more babies." You know that Marcos and Cecilia, his wife, have tried for babies. It kind of hints to like IVF, or like the process of just like attempting to have babies and then they couldn't. And the last sentence that Marcos says, the last sentence that ends this book is, she started to have a domesticated look in her eyes. I beg your pardon? And y'all, the way I hollered, oh, I hollered because I knew it was going to happen. I knew that in Marcos's mind, he was better, he was kinder, he was more fair, he was ethical in the way that he was disconnected, in the way that he tried to make these deaths as dignified as possible and tried to rationalize like what was happening in the world and how he could best fit. But he was just as cruel and as evil as everyone else, because this seemed to always be his plan, right? That this person would never be a person to him ever again, that they lost that ability to have personhood. And once they started to have this human look on their face, he had to kill her. He had to get rid of Jasmine. And by getting rid of Jasmine, he was better able to satisfy his hunger, which was not for meat, but which was to be a father, to have a family, to have his wife back. So I also think that there's a parallel between this whole world desiring and wanting meat, and then Marcos desiring and wanting his own humanity, which would come from him being a father, which would come from him having a child with his wife. I felt a little raw after reading this. Yeah, yeah. Here's the last paragraph of my book review. She had a human look of a domesticated animal. And to me, this reads that the animals we keep will become a part of us. And with that, we humanize them, nurture them, elevate them to the level of human. And to be human means that you have an inherent meter of rights, care, protection in a world where cannibalism and the literal dehumanization of people happens. Animals and humans almost become unrecognizable. There is a blurred line. So in this moment now, the animal female Jasmine is reverting back to something human, and Marcos must kill her before he can't anymore, before it would be wrong to do so. And the worst part isn't the cruelty of it all, but that all the characters that we met in this book would agree with him. It was a heavy read. I gave this a 3.25. I think the reason why I couldn't give it more is just the fact that there was a little bit of world building that was missing to me. I don't necessarily think that's the author's fault. I do think that was intended. Marcos has a very kind of black and white viewpoint where he sees himself as one of the good guys and everybody else is bad. That's why there was a flatness in the information and in the narration, because although he is a meat processing manager, he probably only sees a small chunk of this world. So everything just seems either this or that to him. There was also like an abruptness to the ending that I didn't really appreciate, that we got all of these details and then the last scene where it was Jasmine giving birth felt very disconnected to the rest of the book. The part about his sister and the wake and their dad eventually dying, that part felt very eh. There were just some parts of writing and the reading and the prose were so passionate, and then there were some parts where it fell flat to me. Here are some of my favorite lines, things that just were really soft, beautiful, poetic language, or really daunting and halting prose that I couldn't get over. There were a lot of really, really standout lines in here. I think there was just something that was missing to me. I'm wondering if it was almost too short. And the more I marinated on it, the more I had certain questions and desires. One of the things is that Marcos did keep to himself. He kind of only spoke when spoken to. So he talked to his boss, he talked to the different organizations that he had to visit. So then sometimes when he was having conversations outside that weren't necessary, they kind of felt like fillerish. So I wish that he had more complex relationships, which I think would better than complex the world around him. This was a very different read for me, and I would recommend it because I would really love to see what people got from it. I would love to know other people's thoughts and opinions and if they kind of landed on the same feeling with Marcos that I did. And there you have it. That is the first segment of Long and Short. I won't do the jingle again. Y'all must think I'm obsessed with the jingle, and I am. And I am. Next time, we're going to talk about these two books, and how much I love them. I'm on the third book right now. Miss Andrews, you got a fan in me, girl. You have a fan in me. Till next time, bye.